Hello and welcome, fellow osmologists, to Osmology. I'm Sue.
And I'm Ben. And in this episode, we're diving into organizational purpose, what it is, why we need it, and how to find it.
So, again, keeping it super light, keeping it really easy, not a
What we
lot to think
do.
about. Yeah, we're just, we're really too shallow. We're surface people and we should do better,
Yeah.
frankly.
Right. And
So,
just to be clear, we're talking organizational purpose, like organizations. We're not talking about like Zen cleaning around the house, organizing, right? Or is that
uh,
something we should talk about
not right now, we shouldn't, because I
later?
don't have a clean house. But I am really glad you brought it up because there was a part of me that wondered if we should dwell over why the word organization. And then I thought, well, I don't know if I have a good answer other than organization. I use it as a broad term for any type of business or uh, nonprofit
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
volunteer, even a volunteer organization.
Yeah.
So I have gotten in the habit of calling everything an organization.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
I
it is,
very similar for me. Yeah.
but it's weird. It's a weird word.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm overthinking
Yeah.
the word.
I don't think it's weird. I actually think it makes a ton of sense. Just, pick any of those entities that you just
Mhm,
mentioned, and if everyone's working in their own little world, that's they're doing one thing. But
mhm.
when they get organized into something, an entity, an
There you go.
organization, then stuff happens, right? So it's like the organization of people and ideas and thoughts and processes and policies and
Yeah,
procedures and yeah. So I think it makes
yeah,
a ton of sense.
right. So what we're saying, in other words, is this could apply, whether you are in business, run a business, in the financial industry, um, running a nonprofit board, like
Yeah.
all of these things. Anytime you need to get people organized toward a single purpose, to get
Hmm.
everybody on the same page, you're
Yeah.
in an organization and
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
got to do the thing.
Yep. And I think like exactly what you said, it applies to like no matter the type of organization, the qualification, the classification, size, right? I mean, if
Mhm.
it's one person that's trying to organize something or two people in a really small effort, we're going to be talking about purpose today. So all that other stuff that I rattled off, like policies, procedures, and everything's like, yep, that's all important to an organization. But we're talking about purpose today. So again, no matter the size, the structure, whatever, what we're talking about applies.
Okay. All right.
Should we get into it?
Let's get into it and let's start with the number one question, the big question. What do we mean when we talk about organizational purpose? What do
Yes.
we mean? What do we
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
What do we mean?
Right.
What
I think
do we mean? Now I've done it all. I've got them
you've
all.
done it all. You got it. And the cool thing is, it's pretty much the same question every time. So, I think that some of these kind of questions, the easiest way to describe it is with an example. And so, I'm very happily going to give an example that's near and dear to my heart, which is the purpose or the focus of one of my favorite volunteer organization, Rotary International. I'm a very active Rotarian. And I think the reason I love the example is because something that I commonly say about Rotary is it's this big beast that does all of these different things. And if you ask, while there might be a high level of general awareness of Rotary and Rotary clubs and
Mhm.
things like that, if you ask person A and person B the same question, what is Rotary? What do they do? You're probably going to get two different answers because clubs are so different. Even within those clubs, different members of those clubs have different levels of engagement and do different things, right? So here in Marshfield, Wisconsin, we're we live. If you ask a member of the Marshfield community what Rotary is, they probably would tell you they're the people that run the Holiday Light Show that
Mm,
raises thousands of dollars and collects hundreds of thousands of food items for food pantries. And the mission of that Rotary event is to address food in the Marshfield area. So if you ask people from Marshfield what Rotary is, they would probably talk something about that and providing food to people that need it.
mhm,
But Rotary does so much more. And so, all of that said, and getting to the point and the definition and the question of what do we mean by organizational purpose, their purpose is actually, and I'm reading now, aiming to improve the world through humanitarian service, peace, and goodwill. So, running a holiday light show, collecting canned items, yeah, I can attach that to humanitarian service and goodwill, but that's definitely not the purpose of Rotary International.
mm,
But things like Rotary Winter Wonderland, or things like the local service project cleaning up the side of a highway, or building a shelter at a park, or an experience that Rotary provides, like a international youth exchange program, where
mm,
students are coming here to learn in our school system, and then the same thing happens back with our students going out and learning across the world. Like those things contribute to promoting peace. Those things contribute to creating goodwill around the planet. Obviously, a lot of this done through humanitarian service. So organizational purpose, having it declared and understood at a high level by the organization, can really help inform and educate and market and promote the stuff you do. You know what I mean? I really think while it can happen the other way around, you just start doing stuff. Um, you're probably not doing yourselves any favor by first understanding your purpose. Why do you exist? And I guess that's maybe another example that I would give to help organizations get to understanding their organizational purpose, which is asking yourselves or your board or your leadership or your entire company that question: why do you exist? You know, and I think that's a great first question to get
mm,
to defining your own organizational purpose. So I think because different organizations, that the answer to that question can be so different for each organization, it's really tough to put a definition on it. Um, but I think by giving an example and maybe an intro question, organizational purpose is maybe a good place to start. So, what do you think of all that?
I think I think I am going to synopsize what you just said. Uh, so in other words, what we are saying here is it is more than what you do. It is why. It is the reason behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to way oversimplify everything you just said and said so well
Oh, thank you.
was to you're welcome, was to get to my next question for you, which is do you think that people in a business mistake their purpose as to make money?
Mm,
And because I think we both believe, I know we both believe that you can do that too. You
yeah.
can do that. Nobody's starting a business to lose money.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe people are. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
People, some kind of a tax shelter situation that they could be doing.
Hmm.
But um, everybody in general, everyone who starts a business is doing it to make money.
Right.
But it is the reason you want to make that. It's either the reason you want to make that money. I think there are some businesses that uh, the money that they make is somewhat secondary to their mission and it
Yeah.
funds the mission, right?
Mhm.
Even for-profit businesses. I don't know. I think about who is a highly mission-focused business. Ben and Jerry's.
Sure. Patagonia was going to be my
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. So they they do good things. They do well in their business. Um but the purpose is higher than the money that they make.
Yeah.
Um even though they make plenty of it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's the old like, doing good by doing good or doing well by doing well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the money thing is the thing that I think can get in the way, and I suppose our nature as humans and this thing called greed can maybe get in the way of understanding one's purpose or defining
Mm,
it or understanding your organization's purpose. But I think even if you want to be focused on the dollars, like you're still going to have to answer the question at some point, or you're not going to be around enough to give yourself the opportunity to answer the question. So if it's all about the money for you, it's
mhm,
probably because you're trying to achieve something which, might be financial freedom so that you can do something else in your life, or
mm,
maybe maybe it's driven by a current or a previous career where you were working yourself to death. And so you need to do this other thing to make income in a different way, which it's all about the money. But the end result is that you can spend time with your kids or,
right.
whatever. So then we start talking about purpose. We start talking about why we're doing what we're doing. And if that turns into an organization of people and
Mhm,
other things, well, then hopefully that organization is guided by the reason that you started the business in the first place. And all of your employees get the same benefit of
mhm,
spending more time with their kids or, whatever the thing
right.
is that you were trying to do. Right. So even if it's about the money,
Mhm,
which, yeah, like credit unions talk about this often, the balance between like the social and business side of what we do. Like we've got to make some money so that we can do what we do, you know?
mhm,
So you
right.
can't ignore the money, and it's all about the money, and it doesn't have to be all about the money. It's this like weird little thing that's swirling around all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think one of the reasons maybe people focus on money, um, is because there's a great tangibility to it,
Right.
and you can associate success with money, and you can measure the level of you just have to look at comparable businesses and decide, and you have a number that you can assign to being more successful than another business.
Right.
And that makes it easy.
Yeah.
And even if I think maybe, um, and I want to acknowledge that I am having an argument with someone who is not arguing with me and doesn't exist. But even if someone said, "Well, no, that there are some people for whom there is not a higher purpose. They just want the money, they're not trying to spend more time with their family, they're not trying to retire earlier. It's all about ego." Well, then there's your purpose. It is
Right.
their purpose is feeding their ego.
Yeah.
And that still, like, money is a way into that. Money is a means by which they're feeding their ego, and they have again, they have a tangible way that they can feed their ego, but it's still not
Mhm.
money. It's
Yeah.
ego,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
maybe like, go
and
ahead.
to each their own.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we want our ideal, I think, is to have everybody making the world better with what they do and being focused on that purpose being something positive and, all of
Hmm.
those things. But if someone's whole purpose is related to feeding their ego and they're not hurting anyone else
Right. That's
when
the
they do
key.
it, yeah, then okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
do the thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Maybe to give it a less gross word, like legacy, is maybe
Yeah.
a different way to say ego. But I
Mhm.
think, again, depending on like who you're hurting along the way, or
Right.
including things like, of course, people, but the environment or,
Mm.
communities, things like that. A lot of hurt could come by someone trying to build or leave a legacy.
Mhm.
And it probably is hurt when the focus is more on your own ego instead of, an actual, legacy that's grounded in the right thing and all that. But
Right.
anyway, maybe we're getting just a tad bit
Yeah.
philosophical here, but
Yeah, and that is one of our strengths. I
yeah.
think
But the
it's
point the point is there is purpose. Like the
mhm.
purpose can't, like, income is not the purpose. Like there's something behind that. Might
Right.
not be pretty, but there's something behind it.
Right. Right. Well, and I think what's important about sort of hashing that out for folks is I think that when you start to have a conversation about organizational purpose, there are those people that are, you mentioned that whole like social purpose versus business purpose. There are people who are saying, well, I have a business purpose for what I'm doing. I don't need to think about the rest of this and connecting and everything. Like people just need to, I mean, uh, I have a pretty perfect boss right now, but
Ooh.
I have definitely worked for people whose attitude was like, you don't need to understand what is happening. You simply need to follow my orders.
Yeah.
And can you about imagine what it's like to work with me? And
Right. Sounds great.
yeah, yeah, it's probably why I didn't last. But um so to make the argument that connecting there isn't a version of a successful business that doesn't at least understand and acknowledge what their purpose is.
Mhm.
Um, there I don't know. I don't think that there is a way through, especially once you have more than one person trying to do the same, trying to run the same organization, to
Mhm.
not be aligned in purpose is, I don't know, I think a key to failure.
Yeah. Right. Well, we've maybe teased it a little bit here, but how does it help an organization to be grounded in purpose? What's the outcome on the other side of doing the work, creating an understanding, sharing that understanding both, maybe internally and externally? What's on the other side? How does it help?
I have lots of thoughts.
Oh,
Lots of thoughts.
let's do it.
So and all to say there are a lot of business and interpersonal and relationship arguments for for focusing on and understanding purpose. And I tried to, as I was making myself some notes for this section, I tried to sort of think across my whole career and how I can easily connect, you know, purpose for marketing, because that helps us do our job. It helps us communicate.
Mhm.
But that's not the only. It's not a marketing issue. It's an organization issue, right? So, when I think back to training, understanding your purpose helps you coherently message what you're doing. I It's pretty easy, even in training, to say, well, don't ask why you're doing it that way. Just do the thing.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but to be able to say, the process is this way because here's the benefit to the person on the other end, the end user, or, to say it is super complicated because it's eliminating these other issues and eliminating those issues gets our organization closer to our purpose, whatever those reasonings are. Um, that is purely the training. um, that's the sort of the practical foundational training part. And then, as you're developing employees more, and I think this starts to get into coaching, but also uh, understanding your purpose helps you. One of the key components of being effective in training is to understand, to be able to identify and help people fill gaps. So
Mhm.
you have to know where someone needs to be to get them there.
Yeah.
And um, having that purpose, if understanding that when that person leaves, your safe little cocoon of training, that they have to be connected to your organization's purpose so that they're making good independent decisions, that helps crystallize what you need to teach them and helps you test and check with them. Like I said, that sort of segues into coaching
Mhm.
because as people, once people are out of especially initial training or going through, um, you know, continuing training, when you're coaching them, you have to be, first of all, the coach has to be on the same page as the trainer. You both have to be guiding someone toward the same purpose. Um, and you have to be able to, as you're coaching a team, give them a coherent picture of where everyone should be working toward. And
Mhm.
then you can
Right.
have conversations about, um, not you cannot engage in personalities. You can ask people, if they have a issue with how another coworker is doing something or they have something they want to bring to the team. You can have a really frank conversation about, I either see or I don't see how that is connected to the purpose of what we're doing here.
Mhm. And
So, uh,
yeah, if only for that conversation, right?
right.
Like, is there anything more valuable?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, and I think I don't want to dwell too long on this, but I do think that that's a thing that when you are maybe a reporter instead of a reportee, when you are reporting to someone, you're at that level of the organization, it is it is pretty easy to lose sight of the fact that um the people around you that you should be aligned with the people around you.
Mhm. Yeah.
And if they um I'm trying to think of annoying habit. If they crack their knuckles, right? If you're all sitting in a room together and they crack their knuckles, which you find very annoying, uh, it's a conversation to have with that person. But if it's not keeping the team from moving toward your greater purpose, uh, it's not the biggest conversation we're going to have today.
Right. Yeah.
Deal with the thing. And, a lot of these things always come. I think so much about our accountable teams work and the things we've done, like learning to distinguish between real issues and, those personal petty annoyances. And
Mhm.
for some people, I don't want to downplay it. For some people, uh, you can have a real issue. Um, you can have a mental illness or a physical, uh, or even a physical illness that is driving you to not be able to listen to people chew. Like there are
Right.
things,
Yeah.
and it's serious and it's real, and we
Yeah.
can't downplay it when we are talking about purpose and coaching, and like that's the area we're in. It is easier when you understand the purpose of what you're all trying to do to differentiate between real issues, which are things that keep the team from moving forward, and not real issues, which still exist,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Anyway, that's a whole thanks for coming to
That's
my
another
TED Talk.
episode.
That is, yes. Um, More stuff. I have more idea. I already said interconnectedness. Um, Being able to know that all different personalities have to work together on a team. And we we don't have to be friends. It's great. I think our team does a good job with being friends,
Mhm.
but you don't have to be with the people on your team. You don't even have to like them. And but the important thing is to understand that you're all moving toward the same purpose, be able to build the trust that's what they're doing.
Mhm. Right.
So anything else, personal, political, what have you, you set aside and
Right.
learn to trust that person that everyone's moving ahead. And
Yeah.
then finally marketing. I put marketing last so I didn't feel like I was being you
Yeah.
know,
Not too biased, right?
not to be biased, but um also like I said at the top, uh you have to know to create a coherent brand, to create a connection to the people that that brand is meant to connect to, you have to know what the purpose is.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I always come back to that quote from Simon Sinek, which is that, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's what the purpose is to,
Yeah.
is understanding why you do what you do. How
Right.
about that?
You nailed it. Yeah.
Questions, comments, concerns, criticisms?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna just lean into the marketing bias and just say, when it comes to an understanding of purpose and how that might come through in things like your marketing and community engagement efforts and stuff like the next word I would go to that is just crucial along all of this is authenticity, right? Like
Mhm.
there's nothing that's protecting you or anyone from the BS detector that every person has, to say, I've declared our organizational purpose as this, and then you put it out in some way that is absolutely not true, absolutely not the way you're running your business or things like that. People are not stupid. Everyone has a BS detector and it's running on high. So, maybe some different than others, right? So, that's I guess, the only thing that I would add to what you're saying is
Mhm.
specifically related to marketing, right? Like, you got to run that thing through the authenticity filter. And if it's not feeling good,
Mhm.
be careful what you do with it, I guess is all I'm saying. So, I know we're going to talk about, how an organization finds its purpose or defines it, but authenticity is going to be a continual theme there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally agree. So, I mean, so, like, let's get there. How does an organization identify its purpose?
yeah,
It does
yeah,
like, you put a whole bunch of purposes in a hat and pick one?
great.
Do
Oh,
you
is that not how
throw
you do it?
darts at a dartboard? Something like that?
I'm not that good at darts, so I don't know if I'd advocate
Okay.
it.
Maybe it's
Uh,
like a D&D thing where you, like, roll for purpose
there we
or
go. Yes, that's it. We just need some
yeah.
dice. Everybody, go pick up some dice. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess to say it as short as I can, I'll just say put in the work. That's I guess coming from me, my unfiltered response to the question. And an organization definitely identifies its purpose by putting in the work to do so. Which, at the very top, I mentioned something as simple as just asking yourself some intentional questions like, why do we exist? Why do we exist as an organization? And if you
Mhm,
ask your leadership that, if you ask your entire organization that, you're going to get a whole bunch of different answers, but the answers will, at least serve as the first steps to a guide to, like, getting to that answer.
mhm,
um, of course, there's some really natural opportunities throughout an organization's life to do some of this work, right? Like, every strategic planning session is an opportunity to ask some questions or learn some things about yourself that might help you identify or modify, and that's something that we've talked about too, as we've talked about purpose, whether it's individual or um, organizational. It's
mhm,
not a thing that sits and never changes, right? So,
mhm,
I think that's also the beauty of this is maybe takes the pressure off about, like, getting it perfect or getting it right, or feeling like you have to have, like, this absolutely perfect organization wide understanding of its purpose. Like, it's not going to feel that way when you first start to work
mhm,
on this, right? But it can always improve, it can always change. And as the world changes and hopefully your business is adapting and changing with it, like, it's going to change too. So I think that's maybe the other thing I'd throw out there, is it doesn't stop,
mhm,
but the question is, how does an organization identify its purpose? So I've mentioned a couple of things, asking some really intentional questions, getting feedback from the humans responsible for it, um, taking advantage of moments like strategic planning, board retreats, all staff
mhm,
opportunity. Anytime you get people together, like, that's an opportunity to maybe not always ask the hard questions, but even maybe just observe, like, what's bringing people joy.
mhm,
um, and I suppose on the financial side too, like, what things are we doing that's making an impact in a positive way related to
right.
our financial performance, and does that contribute to us, you know, clarifying this is why we're doing what we're doing? Because not only is it, I guess back to the cliche, doing well by doing well, or doing good by doing
Mhm,
good. Like, hey, we're doing this thing and god dang, it's good for the bottom line. And, it's also helping this segment of people or whatever. So, um, I
yeah.
am totally rambling now, but I
No,
think
I
it's
love it,
two
and
solid ideas.
I I'm going to take a quick left turn and ask
Okay.
you a question that we should not talk about now.
Okay.
But,
Got it.
uh, something as you were talking about that the budgetary thing, right? Like, looking at what is growing in the budget, and thinking about specifically around the idea of strategic planning. Uh, why is it that when we sit down to do strategic planning, we look at we look at all those numbers and the things that are behind. We spend, uh, 80%. This is one of those 80/20 things. 80% of the time saying, "Well, we're gonna increase this, and we're gonna increase and we're gonna do these, then what are we doing to focus on that, and how are we making that, how are we going to improve that, and we're gonna set a more aggressive goal to do more," all the things, on the things we're behind, and the things that we are excelling at, we go, "Oh, thank God we're excelling at that. Now we're not gonna think about it anymore." Um because we have to go and, over here and kick ourselves in the can for 10 hours and figure out why this other thing that we decided, 2 years ago, we should have that semi-arbitrary amount of growth
Sure.
on.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and we didn't do that semi-arbitrary, and I know that there are figures behind it. Okay, most of the time, not
Mm.
all of the time, people sit down to strategic planning with numbers in mind. But I've
Right.
definitely been in strategic planning where people have been like, I don't know, 10% increase.
Yeah.
Um, and so that aside, most of the time people look at what's reasonable.
Right.
But we spend so much of our time um, not focused on what is doing well and how we can capitalize on that. We let it coast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Great.
and I'm sorry, I assume
No.
it's because we think we figured it out and we don't need to do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great question and a real one, real experience that we've had and others have had for sure. Um, I suppose we should maybe just knowing that we're a QSO and that a lot of our clients are credit unions, we should at least acknowledge that sometimes it is to stay within a certain policy or
Mhm,
to bring balance to the kind of business that you're doing to create sustainable health for the business. So
mhm,
you're super high on deposits. That's great. You could lean more into that for sure.
mhm,
But also, like, that you got a lot of money that you need to loan out. So you have to focus on lending and leave that other good thing behind a bit, or maybe same thing, the other way, right? Like lending is
mhm.
really, really good, but holy cow, you're going to need some deposits to make that happen. That's maybe the most easy, like credit union example I could give.
Right.
But so that there could be like business, structural or policy factors to consider here, where you have all the reason in the world to let the good thing coast so that you can focus
Mhm,
on something else. But I think what you're more asking about is the more like arbitrary or opinionated decision to focus on the numbers that are behind goal or whatever,
mhm,
instead of like with your open eyes, like seeing the thing that's going really well and it wouldn't hurt the business anymore to just lean into that. Um, I suppose as I'm saying that, like another reason for not focusing on the good and all of that is just like diversification, right? Like you want to make
mhm.
sure that those things that are underperforming are lifted up so that if something were to change in the world, this thing that's going good for you winds up going away. Well, you've got something to fall back
Right.
on. That might be another reason, right? But specifically when you can tie that thing that's going really, really well. And I think we're answering the question here about how it helps an organization to be grounded in its purpose. Um, if that thing that's going really, really well is very clearly, without question, aligned and contributing to the achievement of your purpose, then like, yeah, why are you spending your time focusing on the other stuff? Go all in on that if that's what's creating the biggest impact,
Mhm.
you know.
Right,
So
right. Well, and maybe what I'm thinking as we're talking this through, I'm glad we solved this for me, um, is why do we look at the things that are working? And, we can let's stick in credit union world because it may be, speaking of like that lending versus deposit example, um, it maybe is the easiest way for me to explain what I think we could try, which is when you have the situation where you have lending people that are really like the top salespeople, right, in your organization, these
Mhm.
are the people that are really they're really moving numbers.
Yeah.
Um, and lending does really well because they're really good salespeople. Um, but deposits, you struggle to always get deposits. Why are we not applying the same things, like some of the same logic and training and people
Mm.
power? And why aren't we saying, well, we can do that, and examine examine the root causes of why we can do it and then apply that to other areas.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think what we end up doing is saying, "Okay, well, that's good. Let's not talk about it. Let's talk about this other thing that isn't good. How are we gonna fix it?" And, not often enough do we say, "Well, why is that good? What is happening there, and how
Mhm.
can we apply that over here?" We say,
Right.
"Oh, well, because in this in that department, we had 5 maternity leaves, and this thing happened, and that other thing happened, and the processes weren't good." Um But we're going to I don't know. Now there's not gonna be any more babies next year
Yeah.
in that department. All of that's gonna change, and we're gonna tell people, that whatever, that they're gonna change the procedures. Well, and, like, in this case, what they need is salespeople.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know. That just an example.
Mhm.
Not and, for the record, anybody listening to any one of the credit unions that we work with, I'm not talking about your credit union.
Yeah.
This is an
Right.
example credit union.
Hypothetical people.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, an interesting conversation about not being over self-congratulatory, not spending time like, "Well, why don't we celebrate that?" We do. You see
Mhm.
the reports, people talk about it, but why don't we apply what we're learning across the spectrum and do these things? Um, and, in some cases, is it because that area is, we've already figured it out, and if we put that same effort in somewhere else, we have to take it away from a place that's already succeeding.
Right. Yeah. And
Okay.
this may yeah, no, yeah, yeah.
I took us
You
a place.
yeah, it's okay. I mean, I think the good news in several cases can be, um, you can take something away from the thing that's working really well without harming that performance or,
Mhm.
being a detriment to that thing still happening the way it is, so it might take a little creativity or some extended support or something, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
dovetailing us back into the conversation we're supposed to be having, if where you end up is looking at those 2 things as you're planning, and one of them is doing really well, highly aligned with your purpose, meeting that purpose, and the other one is doing poorly, um, less well aligned with what your overall purpose is, but maybe a metric that because you can measure it against your peers that you're using the metric for your own success, you should think
Mhm.
really critically about it.
Yeah.
Because if you're not accomplishing what your organization needs to accomplish, and you're just beating yourself up because you can't do the thing,
Right.
you know, at least think about it critically.
Yeah. At the very least. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so how organizations identify the purpose, they do the work, they put in the work.
Yep. They revisit it.
Yeah.
And if those natural opportunities don't come often enough, like strategic planning or whatever, well, then make an opportunity, create your own thing.
And what happens if you're not aligned? What happens if you have I don't know, a misalignment at
Sure.
I think there are different levels you can be misaligned at. So
Yeah.
just for funsies, let's start, like, at the executive level.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to be as doom and gloom as I can probably be about it, like, I mean, uh, I don't know what you can do about it. Like, the simple fact is you might not be around for long, because either someone that has it figured out is going to gobble you up, or certain people of that team that feel the misalignment or are, in the worst space because of it from a, I don't know, job satisfaction standpoint or whatever, like they're going to leave, and
Mhm,
that's going to hurt, so like, I mean, there's a lot of bad things that could happen without. So that's the maybe the bad stuff, like what what do you do, or what could happen? But I hate to just lean back to the original answer again, but put in more work, you
yeah,
know, um, because I think this is just another one of those scenarios where, at the end of the day, if you don't have agreement with everybody or the majority of people on it, the simple truth of us having more in common with each other than having differences with each other is, like, it's very true. It's likely very
mhm,
true, right? So get to the thing that you all have most in common, that
mhm,
you can be aligned on, and because yeah, it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to do one strategic planning session. All of a sudden, you're in some kumbaya state where your 10 key leaders are working towards the same thing. There's going to be a few that are
yeah,
going to be like, "Why are we doing this?" Or I
right,
care more about this thing than that. And so it can't stop there. I guess just more more weight into the previous thing that we said about it being iterative and ongoing and needing
mhm,
attention all the time. So it just might be, if the alignment is so out of whack, like, it might be a little harder up front, or it might take longer or whatever. But keep working.
yeah, yeah, and I think
Is it that is that too simple? I mean,
yeah,
honestly.
I mean, it sounds simple because it's saying it in a couple of sentences, but
Mhm.
what it doesn't, uh, really paint the picture of when you say keep working,
Yeah.
how long that work could take and how, it could be, um, it could actually be really intense. It could bring up some things for people that, get back into that engaging in personalities and some of that stuff. It could, or it could just be exhausting.
Yeah.
Um, I think everybody has worked with someone who is, so entrenched and that trying to come to an agreement on something like this with them,
Mhm.
it takes an emotional toll.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yes, it saying keep putting in the work is a simplification,
Yeah.
but also we can't necessarily speak to what are the things you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
Um, and that
So
is where between keep having conversations
right.
and looking at, different ways people can come together, um,
Yeah.
based on their various different personalities, up to and including saying, "Hey, man, you are never going to like you've made it clear you're never going to align with what this organization is. So we're gonna have to let you go somewhere
Right.
that you align with."
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that there is that also harsh reality where we as people, I think we are, and for the better, we are moving into or have moved into a reality where, um, it's time for people to stop working places just for a paycheck and people to understand that you work for places that align with your values. And
Mhm.
I think that's difficult because first of all, everybody needs a job and you need food and you need to
Yeah.
do the thing,
Right.
right? And you're not always going to have perfect alignment with everywhere you work. Um, but I think that the more we as people that are uh, in the system, we as people being part of the system, the more we're willing to say, yeah, I can't let this place sucked my soul
Mhm.
every day of my life, and I'm gonna go somewhere else, the more we drive that change, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit idealistic,
Yeah.
and that is coming from, someone who's really lucky to have sort of stumbled backwards into a position where, I feel like our purpose is really well aligned.
Right.
My understanding of our expectations of ourselves and the team is really good.
Mhm.
I feel really free to express myself to you.
Yeah.
Maybe too free for your personal liking.
Yeah. I am feeling like we've given some examples, like, if that alignment's not there, if you don't agree on your purpose or can't get to it, the bad things are going to happen, like people being fired or losing their jobs or leaving to go elsewhere or being merged in, or whatever. So,
Mm,
yes, I suppose all that's real. That's why we came to those as initial examples. I feel like some other tactical things that we owe our listeners, maybe to provide inspiration or to consider, is, if this is something that you're trying to do as a small leadership team, have somebody facilitate. So,
mhm,
that's something that you could do to, you know, that's another example of more work that you could do. Try it in a different way, have someone facilitate. If it's strategic planning or something, try a different facilitator the next time that you have strategic planning happening.
mhm,
Hear from different groups of people. Maybe make sure that you're hearing from the entire staff, or make sure that you're
mhm,
hearing from your members, your customers, your clients,
mhm,
to maybe provide new inspiration or confirmation of what you're starting to define as a purpose. So, like,
right,
there's more you can hear, there's more you can learn, there's different voices you can hear from, there's other people to
mhm,
bring into the room. Um, and yeah, all that takes time, all of it
yes,
takes resources, and it's worth it at the end.
yeah, yes, and, um, even though it sounds dire and scary to think that you would have to invite someone to move on, or someone would choose to move on, um, that can be transformative, it can be incredibly positive, it
Mhm.
can be, it can and I don't think I'm downplaying the seriousness of that kind of stuff, but
Right.
uh, I do genuinely believe that there is a gift to be given to someone, um, if you have to say, "I don't want you to fight anymore. You
Mhm.
don't need to, we're not gonna align, and I don't want you to fight to do it. I don't want you to feel like you're the outsider anymore," you know,
Yeah.
and and let them make that decision, sort of for themselves.
Right.
Uh, and yeah, no, I think there's a ton of positive, which is kind of a jerky thing for somebody in management to say, but it's true.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. All right. What's next?
So what's next? Well, we got a book to write is the thing I've heard, but um what's next now that we have had this conversation, this was a spot that we haven't really touched on yet in
Okay.
the stuff we've done.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think this is a good opportunity to strike while the iron's hot, while we're
Exactly. Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, we're having this conversation today because this is a section of the book that we haven't spent a ton of time on. So we've had a lot of good conversations today. I think, uh, summarizing, maybe finding some research or resources
Mhm.
to back up some of the ideas we've put out there today, examples and other good
Yeah.
stuff that's going to make the final cut of the book. We've got some work to do to do all
Yeah.
that.
I would be really interested to find out, and this is one of those incredibly half-formed ideas. Um, I would be interested to find out other people's perspective on having a purpose, if they understand the purpose of the organization, if they think, it need I mean, especially people who work for an organization that they are misaligned with,
Mm.
and maybe either through just being new, being young and inexperienced, being that purpose of the organization not being well communicated. Like I would be really interested to hear if people like can confirm that they understand anything about this or have ever thought it was needed because I feel really strongly it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something that people talk about a lot.
Right. Well, I imagine we can get some confirmation from those kind of folks, and we can probably get some confirmation from some of the awesome guests that we have coming up that I think
Yeah,
have a good understanding, work for organizations that are thinking and doing and working this way.
right.
We've got some folks to tap into, I think. So
Yeah.
that's absolutely a tease for upcoming episodes. So
So fun teasing things that we just thought of.
right. We'll make it
Well,
happen.
speaking of upcoming episodes, we are so excited that folks continue with us on this journey. Um, I think we've learned a lot about what we do, about each other, uh, about our endless capacity to talk about basically anything uh, at length. So you can always learn more about us, what we do, what we think, and catch up on all of these episodes at our website, exclamationqso.com, or check us out on your favorite podcast app.
We'll see you there. Thanks, friends, for tuning in. Be awesome, and we'll see you next time.
The Osmology Podcast is a production of Exclamation Services. Thanks to Nick Mulliver for sound production and Kylie Ganther for our cover artwork.
Executive producers are me, Ben Bauer, and my friend Suzanne Campbell.